Good evening, all. It's LaRonda Scott with eXp Realty coming to you with another Thriving Together. As you know, I come each week with a new guest. My goal is to bring you a new topic each week, again, that's helping you to thrive in every way possible, whether it's mentally, physically, professionally, or personally. And this session is pre recorded this evening due to an agent attraction event that we are having tonight. But my special guest, I'm super excited to have, and I'm going to allow her to introduce herself, is my line sister and friend, Miss Sonia, Dr. Sonia Richardson. Hello,
Thank you.
lady.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for agreeing to be with me, be on the show with me, and have conversation, and just share some gems with the folks. So, if you don't mind, please, introduce yourself. Tell folks a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am Sonyia Richardson. As you heard, I am LaRonda's LS, of course, of AKA Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated,
Yes.
Kappa Kappa chapter. And I am a mother. I have two boys who are adults. I am also a wife. I've been married for 20 something years.
Ooh,
And
congratulations.
I had to think about it. 22 years. There we go. 23 years. I am also assistant professor in the School of Social Work at UNC Chapel Hill. And I have a secondary appointment in the Department of Psychiatry in the School of Medicine. I am a therapist. I am also a business owner. I own one of the longest standing Black women owned mental health agencies in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I've had that agency for 17 years. I'm so excited to be a 17-year business owner. And I'm a researcher. So I do a little bit of many things. And I always tell people when it comes to like your purpose and your goals, I've accepted I'm not the or, I'm the and. So I'm this and
Mhm.
this and this and this. And it's okay to be ands. For years, I had people say, well, are you a therapist? Are you a professor? I'm a therapist and I'm a professor and I'm a researcher
I
and
am
I'm
all
a
those things.
I'm all of these things. And
Mhm.
I'm totally fine with that. And so that's who I am. I'm also an author. I left that one
I was
out.
gonna say, I was wondering if you were gonna remember.
Yes. I am also an author. So last year I published Experiencing Greater, an intimate journey with God, which is an allegory. It's a story about a main character who simulates a lot of my life. And so
Mhm.
that book walks you through some of my personal lived experiences, but through a story about a main character. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
that is who I am.
I love it. You juggle a lot, girlfriend,
Yes.
and but y'all, I have to tell you, she's so humble with it, and she's such an amazing woman. Of all the things that she is a dynamic woman, and I love her to pieces. I really
Yay.
consider it.
True.
Thank you. I really consider it to have been an honor to meet you, and to get to know you, and for you to still be in my life after all these years. Because when you get older and you have all these things, you just never know what happens to relationships. Um,
Yes.
but we have been blessed to keep this one intact. So I do.
Yeah.
I consider it a blessing.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's an honor for me to be connected with you and all the great things that you're
Thank
doing. I'm
you.
so proud of you. So very
Thank
proud of you.
you.
Yes.
Because I am you. Because I love sharing your stuff all the
Thank
time.
you.
But I do have a question for you though. So when
Yeah.
you look at where you are and the things that you are doing now, what would you say inspired you? What just really lit that spark for you to take the direction that you've taken?
Actually, the answer to that is in my book. And so what's inspired me? What was the spark? In the
Mhm.
book, the main character is royalty. Her name is
Mhm.
Royalty, but royalty doesn't realize that she's royalty. So she lives her
Mhm.
life. She lives a mediocre life, trying to fit in,
Yeah.
trying to fit the mold of like the world and the standards of the world. And so one day she awakens to her greatness. And so I
Mhm.
think what inspires me, what kind of got me to the point is an awakening. I
Yeah.
awakened years ago and realized that God had given me a mission. He had
Mhm.
given me a lot to accomplish and a great purpose. And
Yeah.
the purpose wasn't easy. It's been difficult. It's been challenging. It's a lot to navigate at times, but uh,
Mhm.
I awakened and I trusted God and I've leaned on God and had faith. And it's through that that it's gotten me to this point. Everything that I do in my life has been purpose and I would say influenced by something that I went through.
Mm.
So, like my research
Mhm.
on suicide among Black people, which is what I
Mhm.
researched, that was inspired by experiencing the deaths of local Black kids who died by suicide. And the pastors were calling me in to, after the kids died, I was called in to Sunday schools to talk to the kids about their church member who had died by suicide. And I was like, okay, this isn't right. Why am I coming in
Yeah.
after the fact? And then we also
Right.
had Aurora who died by suicide. And I was
Mhm.
greatly affected by her death. My kids called her
Mhm.
Smiles. She smiled all the time.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so we went to the same church together, but she ended up dying by suicide several years ago. And so
Mhm.
everything that I've done since then has been an honor and recognition of the kids that I know who have died by suicide, and our soror who also died by suicide.
Mhm. I know, listening to what you said, your kids called her Smiles, and we recently had a conversation to where we think that we should always see it on a person,
Mhm.
and know when they're in trouble and be able to recognize it. But you taught me something, that that's not always the case.
No, it's not always recognizable, and oftentimes suicide in the Black community, particularly with our kids, looks like a kid who's really anxious, a
Mhm.
kid who is striving to be like that top student that's, ace trying to get A's in every class. It's that kid that has a lot of pressure on them, is what
Mhm.
suicide looks like. We often think it looks like depression, but in the Black community, it's not just mainly depression for us, it's anxiety. And so that constant
Mhm.
worry about, am I good enough? Am I going to be able to do this? Will they accept me? Will they like me? Will they treat me okay because I'm a Black person? All of those
Right.
anxious thoughts, that
Mhm.
accumulation of that can be a risk factor for us for suicide. So it looks very different. And I would have never thought that this soror was suicidal. She appeared to have a great life,
Right.
but after she died, just learned about a lot of the sadness
Mhm.
and trauma that she was dealing with.
'Cause we as a community, we do a good job of hiding things. You're
Yeah,
gonna see one side of me, but
yeah,
only if I feel comfortable allowing you to see, the other pieces of me. You just never know.
yeah. You never know, and that comes from historical trauma. So
Mhm.
as a population, particularly like for African Americans, we were trained years ago that to stay alive, to
Mhm.
keep our kids alive, we had to
Mhm.
act as if all was well. And so if we showed any signs of like distress or anxiety or depression, then it was possible that we would be killed or we would be put in a mental institution or we would lose access to our
Mhm.
families. And so we were trained when we were enslaved to be
Mhm.
happy, to act like we were happy, to have somewhere to live and to have, basic shelter
Mhm.
and food and
Mhm.
stuff. But yeah, so it's some historical stuff there.
And it just carries on. And then too, I know, I have felt it always being better than your counterpart.
Yeah.
I always gotta outperform, be better, know more, do all the things. So all
Yes.
those things just pile on and add to it.
Yeah. We're damaging our community and our kids when we say to them, you got to work 10 times harder. Because
Mhm.
we really, in essence, strive to work 10 times harder because
Yeah.
we think that's what we have to do, but that's killing us. We have to
Yeah.
stop. We have to stop with that pressure because even if we work 10 times harder, it's still not good enough. So give
Mhm.
it up. Just do your best.
It's just recently, and I'll give a shout out to the National Black Workers Center, working with them and working in the social justice arena. I got to a point to where I could appreciate rest and
Yeah.
realize I deserve
Yes.
rest.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
deserve quiet. I don't have to be go, go, go
Exactly.
all the time.
Yes.
And I'll never forget being in my first meeting, and we were, becoming one with our breath and doing breathing exercises. And I'm like, was this is a part of the agenda? What are
Yes.
we doing right now?
I love it. I love it. Yeah, because
What are
it's
we doing
important.
right now?
Yeah. And and rest is not just like it's like making sure you sleep at night and making sure you get
Mhm.
rest. But it's also like a mentor told me last week. She said, Sonia, she said, you got too many meetings a week. She said, you got way too many meetings. She said, you need to have a
Mhm.
max of 6 meetings a week. She said, and
Sit.
when you reach six, she told me six. She said, because you need time to work, you need time to think, you need time to write, you need time to do research. She said,
Mhm.
so six. She said, so when you reach that sixth meeting for that week, that's it.
Mhm.
She said, you're gonna have to take those next meetings to next week. That to me is rest. Like that
That
is
is
rest.
rest.
Yes,
Did you
yes.
tremble a little bit though when she said that? Like,
I was like
she,
6 because I told her girl, I'm having about 5 to 6 meetings a day. She
that's what
said,
I'm saying. And you said 6 a week.
yeah. She said six a week. She said, she said, so that gives you, she broke it down. She said, so that's about 1.25 meetings a day. She said, that's it. She
Mm,
said, because you need time to think. You need time to
yeah,
write. You need time to create and to innovate. And she said, you can't do that if you're in meetings. She said,
you
so
are
six.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know her. I'm telling, thank you. I'm glad you shared that with Sai so she can share it with me.
I
Um,
know.
now I'm gonna have to evaluate my calendar, and
I'm
it's
telling you. Yeah.
ooh,
Because then what I'm doing now is I'm looking at my whole week. Like this week, I was like, okay, I got 8 meetings. And so then you try to figure out what can I cut. And like there
yeah.
really isn't anything I can cut this week. But moving
Mhm.
forward, I can be more intentional about not scheduling so many. Because
Right.
girl, I was in meetings all day. That's not rest. That's not
No,
good.
it's not. But
Hmm.
I'm gonna go ahead and give you kudos because for you to go from 6 meetings a day to look at your week and see that you have 8 meetings for the
It's
week, then that's
progress. Yes. Yes, I will take that. That is progress. That is
that
progress.
is
That is growth.
progress. Yeah,
Yes.
that's
And you,
growth.
and you know what? And because I did that this week, I got some writing done. I finished a paper up. Like I did
See,
some work. I did some
see.
work. Yeah.
It's like, okay, okay, and it feels good, and it
It
motivates
feels
you to do
good.
it for the rest of the time. So,
Yes. Yeah.
I guess I wanna go back to royalty because 'cause Imma tell you, she was
Yeah.
comfortable in Peasantville.
She was comfortable. She was real comfortable being thinking she was a peasant and staying in Pleasantville. Yeah.
That's scary, though. It's
It,
like, I guess what do you not to give it all, because I'm gonna tell you guys. So one, the book is available on Amazon, and you hear people saying you get started and I couldn't put it down. I literally couldn't put it down. And when I had to stop reading it, I was kind of mad about it because it was like she was on this journey and she's getting to different towns
yeah.
and I'd have to stop. I'm like, wait a minute, I want to know what's happening over
Yeah.
here.
Yes.
So had the book lived in you for a while and you've been listening and you found I mean hearing it, but finally listen.
That book was a hard book to write. It took me about 5 years to write that book. And
Ooh.
the reason why is I had to go through life. So I kept
Mhm.
getting frustrated because I was like, God, okay, what is the end to this book? What is the end? And God
Yeah.
was like, no, you got to go through this city next. You ain't done. And so he would give me one city at a time. And it
Yeah.
literally, I didn't know what city I was in until I started like reflecting on what was going on in my life. So
Yeah.
there's 10 different cities that royalty. So once royalty decides to jump into the car with the driver,
Mhm.
then the driver takes her through 10 different cities. So I literally went through those cities in the order in which the cities are written. And I went through those in my personal life. And I could not get through the city until God gave me clarity on what the
Yeah.
exit strategy was and what the next city was.
Th-
And then I will say the city that I stayed on one city for a year.
for a
I don't know,
year.
for a year.
You you
Um,
want to tell the city? Because
I
we're not
can.
going to give you the rest of
You're not
them.
gonna know. You're not gonna know just from because when you read the
Uh,
book, it doesn't sound like I stayed there for a year. Do you? Can you? guess which what happened or what was going on in that city?
I don't know. I don't know which one.
So the city that I struggled with the most was the city of tragedy. The
Really?
city of the city of tragedy is where royalty has to deal with grief.
Yeah.
And yep, and so in that city is where I said my goodbyes to the soror who died by suicide. In that city is where I said goodbye to my best friend who died from COVID.
Mhm. Mm.
And then in that city was when I said goodbye to someone I had worked with for about 10 years who just died
Yeah.
suddenly. And
Yeah.
so I didn't want to say goodbye.
Yeah.
So I held on to them as long as I could in that chapter. Um,
Mhm.
and I knew when I said my final goodbyes to them, I wanted them to die with dignity. And
Mhm.
so I had to wait for clarity on what words needed to be said to honor their lives in that
Right.
chapter. So that chapter, that was the hardest chapter for me. That was rough.
I mean, knowing that, yeah, that was a tough chapter because, again, you were going through, like you said, you were going through those processes yourself, and as we all know, there's stages of grief.
Yeah,
But that, I'll just say it like it is. That mess doesn't come step by step, and you don't go cleanly from one thing to the other. Some of them, sometimes you pull back a couple of
absolutely.
steps, and you may
Yeah.
even be starting all over again. It's a whole process.
It's the whole process. And so that one, that chapter was it was rough for me. Because it was my chapter of closure to
Mhm.
those three individuals. And it was also like when it comes to grief, you're always trying to make sense of it. Like it never makes sense. It's like, ah, why are these people dying at these young ages? Like, why would
Yeah.
Smiles take her life? Like it just doesn't make
Mhm.
sense. And so I was trying to make sense of it and get clarity in that chapter. And I could not move past that chapter until I had my closure and my clarity. And so
Mhm.
I stayed there for a while.
'Cause some things it's like, is it wrong to say selfishly? It's like, I need answers,
Yeah.
I need answers, and until you give me those answers, this is
Yeah.
where I am right now.
Where I am. And
And
I
those
I
are
literally
deep.
I did not wanna say goodbye to them. I didn't want
Yeah.
it because I didn't want it to end. Like, I felt like
Mhm.
I was holding on to their memories, and so, yeah, that was hard. It was
Yeah.
hard. Um, but I felt like, in my writing, I honored their lives, um, and gave them a voice, and gave them such beautiful names. Like, I
You
think one
did.
is Faith. I can't even remember the other names right now, but I remember one was Faith. They each had like very like core principles and values that I thought signified their lives at
Mhm.
the
Yeah, you
yeah.
did. I think the thing that, stuck with me about royalty and going through her journey is, um, the trust factor that we
Yeah.
have with God. Because it's like, I don't know what you're doing right now. And I could
Oh
feel
my
her
gosh, you're
so
making no
much.
sense.
Yeah.
Yes,
It was like,
yes,
what are you doing? And are you not gonna talk to me? It was a
yeah,
trust factor and
yeah,
feeling like I'm not hearing you. You're not talking to me.
yeah,
I know you see me feeling all this craziness and I'm thinking that you're not gonna talk to me right
yes,
now.
yeah,
So I think
yeah.
that's what stuck with me.
Yeah, and I love how you said that because God is saying to us, I've been talking the whole time. You ain't listening.
Mhm.
And God was talking through nature. He was talking through so many other things that were happening, but we don't we haven't been still enough or rested enough to be able to really hear, we know when God speaks. And so, yeah, she was frustrated. She was frustrated. And I think for me, another takeaway from it was God is going to take us through triumphs. He's going to take us through these cities where we just have favor. And like, I feel like right now I'm walking through a city of just favor. Like it's just
Mhm.
overflowing favor. And I'm so
Mhm.
grateful for that. And God will also take me through that city of tragedy.
Yeah.
He'll take me through a city of disaster. And no matter what city he takes me through, I have to be willing to trust him. I might
Mhm.
not like it. It might not feel good. It might feel great. Either
Mhm.
way, I have to learn how to trust him and to know that wherever he takes me, I'm covered and I'm protected.
Yeah. Because we like everything to feel good.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we buy into mythology to where, if I have a relationship with you, I get to know you, I do all these things,
Yeah.
then you're supposed to make life feel good.
That's right. That's
Why
not how
is my
that
life
works.
feeling good right now?
Yeah, that's not how that works at all.
No,
I,
but we want it to.
yes, we wanted to. We wanted to. But, and I would say I have found closer I've gotten to God and the more He's opened doors, the
Mm-hmm.
more stress I go through, the more um, um, conflicts I experience, like with other
Mm-hmm.
people. Like it's like they say, to whom much is given, much is expected. I mean, it's the blessings come with a lot of struggle, and so
Yeah.
you got to be willing. You got to be willing to take on both and to trust Him through both circumstances. So
So when you get on the other side, what are just some of the lessons, like example of the lessons? Because people are thinking, listening now, and are thinking, I'm in like a forever storm right now. So
yeah,
what do I
yeah,
have to look forward to?
yeah. Good question. So after you've gone through that city of of disaster or that city of tragedy, what are the lessons? Oftentimes that you did it, you got through,
Mhm.
you survived, and you held on. So again, I'm a suicide researcher. When
Mhm.
you think about suicides, people die by suicide because they feel like life would be easier if they were dead.
Yeah.
So when I'm going through that city of disaster and I hold on and I refuse to give
Mhm.
up because I know it's going to get easier. It ain't easy right now. It don't feel good. It don't look, maybe it don't even look hopeful or optimistic, but that's a
Mhm.
city I'm going through. When I
Right.
understand it's a city and it has a certain length to it, like it has a time frame to it, and I'm going through. I'm not staying there. I'm going.
Mhm.
Um, when you can go through that, the going through strengthens you. It toughens you. And I would say, like, even like I've been at another university for the last, I don't know, 13, 14, 15 years.
Mhm.
And I feel like my skin has gotten so thick and I've dealt with so much that I'm ready to face and deal with whatever's next. And so each city that you go through, each experience that you go through is literally strengthening you, toughening you up so that you can deal with what's next. And so that you can be grateful for what you're going to be blessed with as a result of persevering and going through.
Because a couple of things I'm sitting with that you said, is that if we didn't experience these things, we don't toughen up.
Yeah.
Everything is going to hit us, and it's going to hit us hard.
Mhm.
And it will be hard for us to experience, as to where when we go through things, we things are not going to always be easy, but the way
Mhm.
in which we approach it and cope is going
Yes.
to different. But something I did not think about in reading the book that you just said is you purposely looked at it as cities because there's an entrance and an exit. um,
Yes.
you're going through, you're passing through. I did not, I saw
Yeah.
the city as cities as, okay, this is a city of, and this is an experience. This is what we're going to cope with right now. But if you think of the things that you're going through, this is my city right now. I
Yes.
just entered
Yes.
it. I got to keep on driving because just like I came in, there's an
Yeah.
exit.
That's right. Go ahead and preach.
Yeah. I'm not
Yeah.
just making a connection, just again,
Yeah.
real
Yes.
nuggets from that book. I love that. And that's helpful because it
Yeah.
gives you something to think of.
It
You
does.
know?
It does. And there's different things like in each city, there are different things for royalty to experience. So she saw
Yeah.
different sights, she heard different sounds, she dealt with different fears. She dealt with
Mhm.
like the grief. She dealt with these range of emotions in the different cities. And she made it through because she trusted God.
Mhm.
Like she had a higher source, a higher power that she leaned into as she went through those scary spaces, or as
Yeah.
she went through those spaces that were, overflowing with blessings. Like
Right.
she had somebody with her. And so I think, in life we have to ask ourselves, who's in my car? You know,
Mhm.
am I taking the right people in my car? So if you notice, royalty didn't take nobody with her.
She didn't take anybody. It was
And I was
hard for her to get in the car and go because she
yes.
was leaving people behind.
Yeah, she left people behind. And when I was writing the book, I was like, okay, God, but what about my family? What about my kids? And he was like, no,
Yeah.
it's your spirit. This is your journey.
Mhm.
Everybody has to go on their own journey. Like
Yeah.
everybody has their own journey to developing a relationship with me. And so this is
Mhm.
your intimate journey to experiencing greater for yourself. You can't take nobody on this journey. But
Wow.
what people do and what people like even with my kids reading my book, they get to experience, they see it, they witness it. And
Mhm.
they see me going through the cities. And so they
Yeah.
get to see how I make it through, how I persevere, how I bounce back.
Right.
So it ends up being like so although I couldn't take them with me, they got to experience every city, and they got to experience
Mhm.
them making it through and persevering.
Yeah. And then they understood their own cities. They
Yes,
knew what to call it and knew how to understand what they were going through. I'm getting
yes,
ready to admit I did not even think I need to get my babies the book. I
yes,
gifted that book to someone else, and I told you about that because I was after I finished it, I said I can't just sit on this. This was not just for me to read and take from it. Who can I bless somebody else with it? But
yeah.
I hadn't even thought, Lord,
It wasn't time. It wasn't time yet. Yeah. So yeah,
I
it's
gotta
time
do that.
now. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because my boys got, and I've had a lot of girls groups reading it and stuff. It's
Mhm.
pretty much for anybody. There's no age group,
It
no age
is.
limit for it. But yeah, we all have to awaken to the journey and have to ask ourselves, where am I in life?
Mhm. The
Yeah.
other piece of it is in taking somebody with you, they're distractions.
Yes. Yes. They're distractions.
Mhm.
And they're distractions from you focusing on God.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
And
then
you
you
start
get consumed with them.
you're worried about them and how
Yeah.
they're getting through and all this, and you're not doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing is focusing on yourself and your relationship.
Yes, yes, yes. It's the key. And interestingly, like when I think about growing up, I grew up in the church. Like my mom was
Mhm.
the church secretary. So we were at church all the time.
Yeah.
And so I had the foundation in the church, but I didn't really have a relationship with God. I knew how to do
Mhm.
church, but I didn't know how to have an intimacy
Ooh,
with God.
that is
And
so
so
right.
it took me going on this journey to really develop the level of intimacy that I needed with God.
Mhm.
And this did not come through the church. The church
Mhm.
inspired some of how I navigated through the cities, but this
Yeah.
was a one-on-one relationship between me and God. And
Yeah.
this is what I needed to develop. I had the religion stuff down pat. I know how to do that stuff, but I need
We
a relationship.
yeah. We know that part well.
Yes.
My grandfather was a pastor, so I lived in church,
Girl,
and
time.
on the weekends, Amy Zion had all these different workshops and stuff for the youth. So I'm like you, I knew how to do church. Yeah,
Yes.
everything acolyte, usher, Christian
Girl,
education,
yes.
all those
Oh,
things.
yeah. Oh my God. Choir, children's choir. We did
Ooh,
everything. Yes.
but it wasn't the relationship work like you're talking about.
Yeah.
So,
I saw God as like a judgmental. I thought my experience in church as a child was
mhm,
being raised with a God who always judged me. And I had to get it just right. It had to be perfect. Like I had to get it right so I could go to heaven. That was the kind of God
mhm,
I was serving. And then
yeah,
as I developed relationship and had intimacy with God, I'm like, no, for me, God has been a Black woman. So,
mhm,
I've in this book,
yeah,
I won't give it away, but this is also during a time period where I was accepting that God can be a Black woman. Jesus can be
mhm,
a man, God can be a Black woman. God can be whatever I
mhm,
need God to be. And when I saw God as
mhm.
a Black woman, I was like, "Oh God." I was like, "My God is bad." Like, cause I was like,
Yes.
she got my back. Like I felt covered. I was like, if I have a
Yeah.
Black woman, God, she covering me. She ain't playing.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so I went through this Black feminist and womanist perspective of, okay, my God can be Black, and it was me
Yeah.
and God as a Black woman that helped me with intimacy. Because as long as I saw God as a man, and then
Mhm.
with how I was raised with my old Bibles and stuff, him being a white man, as long as I saw him like that, it was hard for me to have intimacy with him.
Yeah.
So I had to see him as a Black woman to have the intimacy.
Because then it was like, okay, so you can understand me, you
Yeah,
can relate to
yeah,
me, you get
yeah.
me,
You get me.
and
Yeah,
that's
you totally
right.
understand. Yes. Yes. And I was like,
Yeah.
nobody had ever told me that I can create God in the image that I need to create him in for me to have the level of
Mhm.
intimacy that I wanted.
Yeah.
Nobody ever told me I could do that. I always thought, and so I still go back between God being a man and God being a woman. And God can be whoever I need
Mhm.
to be at the moment that I need them to be it. Because God is God.
Mhm.
Like God is not caught up
Yeah.
in identity and all. That's our stuff. That's worldly stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. You're right. That's our stuff. And just like you said, again, royalty was being spoken to about a lot of different things, and she wasn't
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
And it wasn't church that did that for me. I was on a plane reading a
Mm,
book, and one of the attendants or students, whatever the official name is, saw me reading a book
okay.
and asked me, "So you like to read?" I'm like, "Yeah." And this is some years ago. Have
Mhm.
you ever read, oh, I hope I get the name of it right. Have you ever read The Cabin? I was like,
Okay.
no, I've never
Yeah.
heard of that. And that's
Mhm.
essentially it as well, to where
Wow.
God was coming in many
Yes.
different forms. And
Yes.
I'm like, really?
And God was
So
a black man in that book.
yeah, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that started the work of me seeing God very differently.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I needed that disrupted for me to have
Mhm.
intimacy. And it gave me the
Yeah.
intimacy and the protection that I needed. Because I was like, oh,
Mhm.
God gets me. God understands my
Yeah.
plight. Yeah. I was like,
All
I
of
was like,
the
I was
above.
like, you can mess with my God if you want to. She bad.
And she is not putting up with any
We
mess.
ain't putting up with all that. No. No. And
Mhm.
she's an excellence. Like it was everything that the way I see black women. My God emulated
Mhm.
the way I saw black women. And it just, yeah,
Mhm.
it just took my worship to a different level.
Yeah, it does. It makes you stick your chest out, get a little, feel real good about it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Yes.
If you could just look at where you are now,
Hmm.
what would you say to yourself way back then? You know how to have that question. If the person you are now can talk to your younger self, what would you say?
What would I say to my younger self? I would say,
Mhm.
um, that's a good question. Because my younger self was very different. You saw me in my younger years. I was
Mhm.
very introverted, and I still have some of that in me. I was very quiet. I was that kid that spent time in the library reading on the weekends. Like I didn't go out. I went
Mhm.
I went to the library and read. So I love learning. And I was that kid that spent a lot of time alone. And I would say to that little kid, everything that you're going through, um, everything that you've decided to not engage in as a kid,
Mhm.
you're choosing not to be distracted by
Mhm.
worldly stuff has
Yeah.
paid off. Has paid off.
Mhm.
You might have been seen as different. You might have been thought of as weird. Um,
Mhm.
and it's okay. Just do you. Be you, do you. Yeah, that's what I would have said to my younger self.
I love that because you would think, and I don't know if you can hear that right now. Hopefully, we don't lose each other because we're talking the
Okay.
storm's been going through, and a storm has popped up.
Of course, right?
So, you
Right.
guys, if we all of a sudden disappear, you mean, I just lost power. It makes
Yeah.
me think of, I don't know about you, having your grandma and them turning off all the lights, turning
Girl,
everything,
unplugging everything. Unplugging the
unplugged.
TV.
Like, you better get quiet, let God do his work.
Yes, you better be quiet before you get hit by lightning. Yeah.
Right. Me in the summertime, just sitting real still, just sweating. It's
I
like,
know,
can we,
girl,
we
it's
can't
hot.
turn the air something
Turn the air off. They turned the air off.
on?
It was crazy. Yes.
Oh gosh. Well, I know one of the things that you advocate for, and is in terms of course, mental health, but therapy. And you've
Yeah.
done a lot of work with knocking down walls when it comes to stereotypes and the way in which people look at therapy. What would you say to folks that are listening right now that may or may not even think that that's something that they need? What would you say to people that are listening right now?
Yeah, I heard a really good analogy by a Black male therapist recently. I can't remember his name, but he said, think about your mental health like a car. And when you think
Mhm.
about a car, like every 5,000 miles, 5 to 10,000 miles, you're going to get an oil change. And that oil change is just for you to go in, you get your oil replaced. They make sure everything's smooth. They might check your wipers, but it's just like a check in to
Mhm.
make sure everything's good. Therapy is the same thing.
Mhm.
So you do not have to present with mental health issues to seek a therapist. You can seek a therapist if you just want to talk through, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what's in my head. Because a lot of times what happens for me when I'm working with people as a therapist, they're telling me their story, they're telling me what's going on and the stress that they're dealing with, and I'm making connections. And I'm like, well, did
Mhm.
you know that you said this and you use these words to describe this, but then when you talk about this, you use totally different words. And do you realize when you brought up this person, your nonverbal language changed, and then
Mhm.
you started kind of getting angry and upset, and I saw your heart where you felt like your heart rate was racing. Like, do you notice? So if you get people to notice their train of thoughts, kind of what they're thinking, what their nonverbal
Mhm.
are, and you're helping them to recognize and pay attention to those things. And so you do not have to be coming in because you're depressed or because you're anxious. You can be come in because, hey, I just want to check in, make sure everything's good. I want to
Right.
talk through a couple of things. And so that's a lot of my clients are not presenting with severe mental health issues. That's not the case.
Mhm.
Most people have some degree of anxiety, meaning that I'm so worried about tomorrow that I can't focus on today. Or they might have
Mhm.
some degree of depression where I'm so focused on what I did yesterday and my regrets that I can't focus on today.
Right.
And so you're training and teaching people how to stay in today. What I often
Right.
tell people is today is where your safety is. Like today is
Mhm.
where you're safe. Today is what you have control over. You don't have control over tomorrow. You don't have control over yesterday. You have control over today. And so you're training and teaching people how to stay in the moment and how to stay in today and how to really disrupt dysfunctional thinking. And so it works. It's like getting your oil change, you leave out. My clients always feel better. They feel more hopeful. They have clarity.
Mhm.
They know the strategy. They know, okay, when I leave here, when I get back to work, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Or I know with my family, I'm going to create more boundaries and I'm going to tell my mama,
Yeah.
now look, da, 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 da. And so they have a game plan. So you
Yeah.
walk away with a game plan for life. And then when
Mhm.
you come back, we're checking back in and say, okay, how did that go?
Right.
Might say,
Yeah.
well, this worked or this worked, and then we'll say, okay. So we're helping you process and create a strategy and create a plan. And so therapy is very, very effective. You got to find a good
Mhm.
therapist for you, somebody that fits for you.
Mhm.
But it is very
Right.
effective.
So how do you know what do you look for? Do you have recommendations for people in terms of what they look for? Or
Yeah.
when to
So
know it's like, this is not the one?
yeah, I can tell you what not to look for. So
Okay.
okay, so I would know if I'm seeing a good therapist if the first time I'm seeing them, they're not just trying to like diagnose me or ask questions about what's wrong, but they're giving
Mhm.
me some kind of tool or something that they want me to practice with. So I call it homework. But if you're
Okay.
giving me, like, I know that you know what you're doing. If you're having me work outside of the session, I do not need
Mhm.
to just show up to a therapy session every week or every other week and we just talk about the same things. Like, what's my homework? What's my strategy? What I
Right.
need to practice? And so, like, so therapists that kind of push you, you definitely want
Mhm.
that. You also want somebody you can be real and authentic with. So if I'm telling you, let's just say I say, well, my kid's getting on my nerves, and then you not really helping me to process that or see where that might be coming from or why I'm so
Right.
frustrated. But you're sitting there, girl, they get on my nerve. My kids get on my nerves. If you're doing stuff like that, you're not helping me. Like I, I need
Mhm.
you to I need you to challenge me. I need you to
Yeah.
challenge my thoughts and my thinking. Um, Also, if your therapist does not understand your culture or your lived experience,
Mhm.
like I ain't got time for that. So like
Mhm.
I had mothers who came to me who said, "Hey, we were seeing a white therapist." And I said something to her like, I told my kids, I ought to beat your tail. But she said, but I wasn't really gonna beat them. That's just kind of what we say. She said, but
Right.
she
That's just the thing.
called DSS on her. And she's like, now I got a DSS case. And so
Are
like those
you
cultural,
serious?
yeah. So like you want to be able to show up. You want to be able to show up authentically and say what you need to say in the spaces.
Mhm.
And I need to know I need to be able to roll with you when you're talking. So when you use your pronouns, so
Mhm.
for instance, in populations of color, we use a lot of pronouns. So if I say
Mhm.
to you, girl, they getting on my nerves, I didn't tell you who they was, but you can make
Mhm.
assumptions about they because you understand they from a cultural context.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's a cultural. So
Mhm.
we use a lot of pronouns and we don't
Yeah.
say who the pronoun is, but that's what we
Right.
do. So you want somebody that you can just show up and be real and authentic with, and they're not like who now? Who is they? And what is they? What's their relation to you? And they ain't gotta be related. They can just be they. Like,
Right. Right.
yeah. Like
And
I
they
can say,
gotta do all of
girl, they
that.
get
It causes me so much stress.
yes, yeah. It's yeah, I agree. Because I can say to you, I can say, girl, they getting on my nerves with this election.
Mm. All right, there you go.
They does
Enough
not, they
said.
means all kinds of things.
All kinds of things, all kind of people. But you know what? That sparks a whole conversation, and we're gonna
Yes,
talk about them.
we can talk about them. Yes. Exactly. So yes, I would say just kind of just make sure it's somebody that's a good fit that you can be real with. And my clients, I don't care how you show up. If you want to wear your bonnet during our session, I don't care. And if you
Mhm.
want to wear
Mhm.
your bonnet and you say, "Can we wear our bonnets today?" I'll put on my bonnet with you, and we'll be in bonnets in the session. I don't care. Like I don't go by those professionalism standards.
Right.
I show
Right.
up in a space that makes you as comfortable as possible, so you can be real, so you can get the help that you need.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it because people have questions and they're not sure. And it even makes me think, do we even have a session conversation around therapy itself? Because
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, I talk about it being my check engine light comes on. Well, I shouldn't be, you shouldn't wait until your check engine light comes on because then there's some things wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but again, I know in a little circle we talk about it being our person. You need your person.
Yeah.
Like you said, you can talk through and think through things. So before we dip out, we got to let people know. One, share with them again the name of your company, your counseling service there in the Charlotte area. And then I'm going to put your information up.
All right. So the name of the agency is Another Level Counseling. And you can find the agency at anotherlevelcounseling.com. We do provide virtual services, so we are all virtual right now, and we can see anyone in the state of North Carolina. So you don't have to be a Charlotte resident. We can see anyone
Okay.
across the state of North Carolina. So that is anotherlevelcounseling.com. We have all Black female therapists who are our providers, so it's all Black practice. So that's that. And then if you're interested in the book, you can go to either SoniaRichardson.com or you can go on Amazon and search my name. And my
Mhm.
book will come up there. You want the Experiencing Greater book, because I do have two other books, but they're co-edited books. But Experiencing Greater is the book that we talked about, and that's available on Amazon.
My author, LS friend, she
Yes,
just doing the
yes.
doggone thing.
Thank
Um, but again, I gotta shout you out because you are doing your thing and it is blessing people. And you will never know just how big your impact has been.
you.
But I want to thank you for taking that journey, listening to him and going through those cities. But also, most importantly, letting him use you to truly save lives. And there's not a lot of people that can say that the work that they're doing is saving lives, but you truly are, in every sense of the word. So thank you.
You. I appreciate it. Thank you, Sora.
And thank you for being on Thriving Together.
Yes, yes. I was
Get
excited.
ready.
Thank you for the invitation.
My pleasure. I've been telling folks, get ready, because I feel like a sister circle is coming up soon, because I've got a lot of new things, phases. Last time we got together, we talked about being empty nesters. That's a
Yeah,
whole conversation
yes,
right there. So be on the lookout
yes,
this time.
yes. And empty nesters does not mean you take your kids on vacation with you all the time. We're gonna talk about that after the call.
Yeah, we gonna talk about it.
We're gonna talk about what it truly means to be an empty nester because you still trying to take kids on vacation. That's not empty nesting.
We're talking about shh, shh, shh. See how your mind just to do you sometimes.
Just call you out. Just call you right out.
Call me all the way out.
I was like, wait, hold up. She an empty nester. Did she try to take her kids overseas? Okay, we gotta talk about this.
What is that? Well, dang.
What is, I was like, what's going on?
It's time for me to go, y'all, and cut her off. I'm getting ready to cut her off.
No, you're not. I'm just saying. Yes.
But y'all, thank you so much for being with Sonyia and I today. Remember, I'm here every Thursday at 7, whether I'm live or pre-recorded. I want to make sure that I'm bringing something to you that will bring value to your life. I'm more than a real estate agent. Of course, my love is helping people to establish generational wealth through the ownership of real property. But most importantly, I want you to be able to thrive. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you again next week.